Hi everyone! Welcome back to Life Stories 1. My name is Sarah, and I grew up in what looked like a normal family in a typical American town. But behind closed doors, my existence felt like a shadow. I'm 33 now, but from the moment my younger brother Ben was born just 2 years after me, it was like my parents, Carol and David, only had eyes for him. Good grades? Teachers' praise? For me, those barely earned a nod. But if Ben scraped by on a test, it was practically a holiday. I learned early on to make myself small, to expect nothing. While Ben got the big parties and expensive gifts, like the mountain bike I desperately wanted but was told girls don't need, I got discount socks. He grew up entitled, especially after marrying Jessica. She was a master manipulator, turning crocodile tears into weapons. My parents adored her, blind to her act, even as she refused to work, letting Ben struggle while they happily babysat their kids in their already cramped house. I chose a different path: college, moving out, building a career. But then the pandemic hit. I lost my management job, my apartment, everything. Swallowing my pride, I called my parents, hoping for a temporary lifeline. My mother just laughed. "This house is full, Sarah," she said, her voice ice. Jessica chimed in, telling me to grow up. Ben just shrugged. They kicked me out with nothing but a suitcase and dwindling savings. Don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories 1 for more real-life stories. My world shrank to the confines of a beat-up 2005 Ford Ranger with an old camper shell I found online for $1,500, practically my last dime after settling bills. That truck became my home, parked under the harsh fluorescent glow of a Walmart lot. At first, I told myself it was temporary, a week, maybe 2, but weeks bled into months. 3 months of learning the geography of survival, gym showers, gas station restrooms, library outlets for my phone. Each night was a gamble, finding a quiet residential street, praying I wouldn't get the dreaded knock from the police reporting a suspicious vehicle. Winter nights were the worst, huddled in a thin sleeping bag, wearing every layer I owned, listening to the wind slice through the thin metal walls of the camper. Summer mornings meant waking up drenched in sweat before dawn. But the physical discomfort paled in comparison to the sting of judgmental eyes, the pity, the disgust, from people who saw me emerge from my makeshift home. The shame was a heavy cloak. More than once, the thought of crawling back, begging for forgiveness, enduring their contempt just for a roof, crept in. But then I'd picture Jessica's smug, satisfied face, arms crossed, mocking my failure. That image fueled a fire in me. No, I'd rather freeze, I'd rather starve, than be their doormat again. I pounded the pavement, figuratively and literally. Restaurants, retail, gas stations, anywhere with a "help wanted" sign became a potential lifeline. Rejection followed rejection. Dozens of interviews ended with polite dismissals. Hundreds of online applications vanished into the digital void. It was soul-crushing. But I refused to break. I forced smiles, practiced confident handshakes in the truck's side mirror, worked on standing taller, projecting an optimism I rarely felt. Then, one sweltering September afternoon, a lifeline appeared. A small interior design company on the outskirts of town called back. They'd heard my story, seen the desperation overlaid with determination, and decided to take a chance. The pay was barely above minimum wage, just enough to scrape by, but it felt like winning the lottery. I poured every ounce of energy into that job. Customer service, stocking shelves, helping in the warehouse. I volunteered for every extra shift, every task. Days blurred into a cycle of relentless work, followed by collapsing into the stifling heat or biting cold of my camper for a few precious hours of restless sleep. Every single paycheck was guarded fiercely. Lunches were peanut butter sandwiches made on the dashboard. Dinners were often crackers and water. Clothes were washed in public laundromats and worn until they frayed. No movies, no coffees, no small treats. Every saved dollar was a brick in the foundation of a dream. When doubt gnawed at me, when exhaustion threatened to pull me under, I'd grip the worn steering wheel and whisper, one day I'll have walls that don't move, a door with a lock, a place of my own. 12 months, 12 months of grinding, saving, sacrificing. Then I saw it. Tucked away on a quiet street in a decent suburb, a small 3-bedroom house. It was old, paint peeling, the backyard a wild tangle of weeds, but looking at the for sale sign felt like seeing a mirage turn real. It was listed at $92,000, an astronomical sum compared to my meager savings, but possibilities sparked within me. Failure wasn't an option. I gathered my pay stubs, meticulously crafted a budget showing my extreme frugality, and wrote a heartfelt letter explaining my situation and my unwavering commitment to repayment. I applied for a mortgage, heart pounding with every click of the keyboard. Rejection felt inevitable, but I pushed forward. Then, the unbelievable happened. The bank, perhaps seeing the grit behind the numbers, approved my loan with a manageable interest rate. I drained my savings account for the down payment, every cent I had painstakingly accumulated. The day I closed, holding those keys in my trembling hand, was surreal. Driving my old truck to my house, parking it in my driveway, it felt like stepping into a different life. I walked in, the air thick with the scent of old wood and disuse. It was just me, my worn backpack, a cheap air mattress I'd bought, and an overwhelming sense of pride that brought tears streaming down my face. I cried right there on the dusty, bare living room floor. I walked barefoot across the worn floorboards, touching the faded wallpaper, whispering to the empty rooms. It's mine. I'm finally home. I parked the old camper in the backyard, a silent monument to the journey, a reminder of the freezing nights and sweltering mornings, a symbol of survival. Looking out the window at its familiar shape under the afternoon sun brought a profound sense of peace. I had weathered the storm, but peace, I soon learned, can be fragile. Just as I was starting to settle in, scrubbing years of grime off the kitchen floor one Saturday afternoon, the doorbell rang. Not a polite chime, but an urgent, demanding series of presses. I cautiously opened the door a crack, and my blood ran cold. Standing on my porch, looking entirely too comfortable, were my parents, Carol and David, Ben, Jessica clutching her purse, and their 3 kids already trying to peer past me. Before I could utter a word, they pushed past me, barging inside as if they owned the place. My mother, Carol, surveyed the sparsely furnished living room, a smug, appraising smile on her face. Jessica shot me a look dripping with her usual condescending disdain. "Well, Sarah," my mother finally said, breaking the heavy silence, her tone unnaturally sweet. "This house, it seems a bit much for just one person, don't you think? A bit lonely?" My fists clenched instinctively. Warning bells clanged in my head. This wasn't a friendly visit. Ben immediately flopped onto the old sofa I'd found on the curb, oblivious or uncaring about the dust, and launched into a complaint about traffic, his demanding job, and how the kids desperately needed more space than my parents' cramped house offered. Then Jessica, ever the opportunist, chimed in, her voice smooth as ice. "Given the circumstances, Sarah, we really think it's for the best if we move in here. You've still got your camper out back, right? It makes perfect sense." I stared, momentarily speechless. What do you mean, move in?" I stammered, my voice shaking not with fear, but with rising anger. "We live in the house," Ben stated casually, as if explaining the obvious to a child. "You can move back into the camper. You're used to it anyway. Besides," he shrugged, avoiding my eyes, "you don't need all this space." The audacity of it stole my breath, the sheer unmitigated gall. Where were they when I was huddled in that camper, praying for morning? Where was this concern for my space when they slammed the door in my face? A tidal wave of bitterness and rage surged within me, hot and suffocating. Years of swallowed hurt, of ignored achievements, of being made to feel less than, culminated in this moment. I took a deep, shuddering breath, fighting for control. "No," I said, my voice low but firm, cutting through their entitlement. "This is my house. I bought it. You are not moving in. You don't get to make decisions about my life or my home." Ben's easygoing facade vanished, replaced by a dark scowl. Jessica leaped up from the couch she'd commandeered, arms crossed, face contorted in theatrical outrage. "You are so unbelievably selfish, Sarah," she shrieked, her voice hitting a shrill peak. "Your family needs this. We need your help. Are you seriously going to let these poor children stay crammed into that tiny old house while you live here all alone?" Her eyes darted towards my parents, expecting backup. I turned to Carol and David, a desperate, fading hope flickering within me. Surely they wouldn't condone this. Surely they'd see how wrong this was. But they stood silent, their eyes avoiding mine, their discomfort a clear sign of their complicity. Their silence was louder than any shout. "No, Sarah," my father finally mumbled, his voice devoid of warmth, cold as steel. "Don't make this difficult. We're your family." Family? The word felt like ash in my mouth. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound that startled even myself. My family? Where was my family when I was homeless? When I called you, desperate, freezing in my truck? What were you doing then? Celebrating Ben's latest minor triumph? Don't you dare talk to me about family now! The air crackled with tension, thick and heavy. Jessica, incensed, stormed towards me, her face flushed crimson with fury. Before I could even register her intent, her hand lashed out, cracking hard across my cheek. The force snapped my head to the side, the stinging pain instantaneous. "You deserved that, you selfish brat!" she screamed, tears, real or fake, I couldn't tell, suddenly streaming down her face. I touched my burning cheek, the imprint of her hand already starting to welt. In that instant, something inside me snapped. The years of enduring, of staying quiet, of absorbing their cruelty, it shattered. I didn't scream back. I didn't dissolve into tears. With a chilling calmness I didn't know I possessed, I pulled out my phone, dialed 911, and spoke clearly into the receiver. "Yes, I need police assistance. I've just been assaulted, and there are intruders refusing to leave my home." The mention of police jolted them from their righteous anger into panicked reality. Ben stammered, trying to pull Jessica back, his face paling. My parents looked utterly horrified, glancing frantically towards the door. I held the phone to my ear, my gaze locked onto theirs, unwavering. "Leave," I stated, my voice level despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Leave my house immediately. If you are still on my property when the police arrive, you can explain your actions and this assault to them." Jessica threw a sputtering tantrum, muttering curses under her breath. Ben made feeble attempts to smooth things over, pleading about misunderstandings. I stood my ground, immovable. This was my sanctuary, bought with sweat and tears. No one was violating it ever again. The police arrived in less than 10 minutes, sirens thankfully silent, but lights flashing ominously in the late afternoon sun. Calmly, I explained the situation, showed them the clear footage from the doorbell camera I'd installed, capturing their forced entry, the argument, and Jessica's blatant assault. The officers exchanged a knowing look, their expressions sympathetic. One officer addressed my family firmly. "You need to vacate the premises immediately." Before being escorted out, my mother shot me one last look, not of remorse, but of venomous anger and bitter disappointment, as if I were the one betraying her. I didn't flinch. I hadn't betrayed anyone. They had abandoned me long ago. As the door closed behind them, I leaned against it, shaking but resolute. I thought that was the end of it, the climax of their audacity. I was wrong. 3 days later, I came home exhausted after a long shift, already picturing a quiet evening in my own space. I stopped dead in the driveway. My front door looked different. The lock was new. Through the living room window, I saw unfamiliar, bulky furniture crammed inside. My heart plummeted when I glanced towards the backyard. My camper, my symbol of survival, had been dragged unceremoniously out to the curb like trash. Panic and fury warred within me. I ran to the door, pounding on it. It swung open, revealing Ben and Jessica, standing there with triumphant smirks, looking like conquerors claiming spoils. "What are you doing here?" Jessica asked, her voice dripping with mock innocence and sickening sweetness. "This is our home now, Sarah." My breath hitched. "What the hell are you talking about? Get out of my house." Ben shrugged, attempting nonchalance, and held up a sheaf of papers. "Can't. We have a legal lease agreement. See? You signed it." He thrust the papers at me. I snatched them, my eyes scanning the document. It was a pathetic excuse for a forgery. A generic online template filled out sloppily, and the signature at the bottom looked nothing like mine. It was laughably bad, almost insulting in its amateurishness. "Don't waste your breath, sis," Jessica sneered, leaning against the doorframe. "We're all moved in, nicely settled. You can just go back to your little tin can on wheels." I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I turned, walked back down the porch steps, pulled out my phone, and dialed 911 again. As I clearly stated my address and explained there were intruders who had illegally changed my locks and were occupying my home with forged documents, I saw Jessica's smugness evaporate, replaced by pure panic. She slammed the door shut. I sat down heavily on the bottom step, clutching my phone, the cold concrete seeping through my clothes. Fury, cold and sharp, boiled inside me. This wasn't just a house. It was proof I could survive them, proof I could build something for myself after they cast me aside. It was mine, earned through freezing nights, skipped meals, endless work. No one, especially not them, was going to take it. 15 minutes later, the familiar flashing lights returned. 2 officers approached calmly. I explained everything again, the changed locks, the reappearance of Ben and Jessica, the forged lease. It took several loud knocks before Ben reluctantly opened the door, his face sullen. Jessica immediately started clutching her stomach, trying the phantom pregnancy sympathy card. It wouldn't work this time. I presented the forged lease to the officers, then my driver's license with my actual signature. The difference was stark, undeniable. "Furthermore, officer," I added, pulling up the app on my phone, "my security system recorded them breaking the original lock and moving their furniture in earlier today." I showed them the clear footage. There was no defense. The officers exchanged a brief, decisive nod. One turned to Ben and Jessica, his voice leaving no room for argument. "You are trespassing on private property and have presented a forged document. You will remove yourselves and your belongings immediately, or you will be placed under arrest." Ben stammered, waving the fake lease uselessly. Jessica burst into dramatic sobs, clinging to an officer's arm, pleading about her children, and having nowhere else to go. But the officers were unmoved. This time, there were no silent parents backing their play. I stood aside, watching stonily as they were forced to drag box after box, piece by piece, back out of my house. The ugly sofa, the cheap suitcases, the kids' toys they'd brazenly brought in. I saw the impotent rage on Ben's face, the angry tears carving paths through Jessica's makeup. Inside, I felt a cold, hard resolve solidify. As they loaded the last of their things, Jessica turned and spat venomously. "You'll regret this, Sarah. You'll be sorry." I didn't reply, I simply closed the door firmly in their faces, the click of the lock echoing the finality of severing ties. Collapsing against the door, I finally let out a long, shuddering breath. But I knew closing the door wasn't enough. If I stayed silent now, they'd twist the story, paint themselves as victims to the wider family. I had been silent too long. That night, hands still trembling slightly, I opened my laptop. I wrote everything, start to finish, the initial rejection, the homelessness, the assault, the break-in, the forgery, the police interventions. I attached photos of the forged lease next to my real signature. I uploaded clips from the security cameras. I included copies of the police reports. I laid bare the truth on Facebook, tagging all the relevant relatives. I ended with, "I've stayed silent long enough. This is the truth. Believe it or not, I won't be trampled on anymore." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Comments, messages, calls flooded in. Relatives I expected to defend my parents expressed shock and outrage. Aunt Lucy, my mother's sister, who always had a soft spot for me, called immediately, furious on my behalf, offering her home. Cousins shared memories of the blatant favoritism I endured growing up. The narrative Ben and Jessica had carefully constructed crumbled under the weight of cold, hard evidence. Their weak attempts to paint me as a liar only made them look more desperate and guilty. For the first time, I wasn't alone in my truth. The fallout was swift and brutal, especially in a town where everyone knows everyone. Ben and Jessica, once the golden couple, became social pariahs. Whispers followed them everywhere. They were still crammed into my parents' small house, the atmosphere thick with resentment, and the chaos of 3 unhappy children. Ben's arrogance evaporated, replaced by a weary, defeated slump. Jessica, who used to swan around like a queen, now avoided eye contact in public. Their finances, already strained, took a nosedive. Ben worked constantly, but supporting 5 people on one salary, especially with Jessica refusing to contribute, proved impossible. Then came the final devastating blow. Rumors of Jessica's infidelity surfaced. Whispers about late nights, secret meetings with a bartender from a nearby town. Ben, perhaps suspecting but refusing to believe, secretly ordered a DNA test for their youngest child. The results were irrefutable. The child wasn't his. The news shattered the last vestiges of Ben's pride. He confronted Jessica, not with rage, but with a chilling emptiness. Her usual tears and denials fell flat. The trust was irrevocably broken. Ben filed for divorce that same week. Aunt Lucy kept me quietly informed. In court, armed with the DNA results and incriminating messages, Ben's lawyer dismantled Jessica's portrayal of herself as a wronged wife. The judge denied her alimony and child support for the youngest child, agreeing to remove Ben's name from the birth certificate. Ben received primary custody of their 2 older children. Jessica walked away with nothing. No husband, no financial support, no home. Her reputation in tatters. Carol and David, seeing her now as a liability, coldly kicked her out. She reportedly moved back in with her own disgruntled family over 100 miles away, taking the youngest child with her. Ben rented a small, cheap apartment across town, living quietly with his 2 kids, seemingly wanting to disappear. Watching this implosion, I felt strangely empty. No triumph, no satisfaction, just a quiet hollow where maybe, subconsciously, I'd hoped for apologies, for change, not destruction. Life, however, rarely delivers neat endings. Months passed. Then, one crisp June morning, an unfamiliar old car pulled up. Ben got out, looking worn and older than his years. My parents followed, their usual proud demeanor replaced by a visible fragility. Ben approached hesitantly, holding a small, simply wrapped gift box. "Sarah," he began, struggling to meet my eyes. I owe you an apology. A huge one. I treated you horribly. I was selfish, blind. I thought you were strong enough to not need anyone. I was so wrong." My mother stepped forward, tears welling in her eyes. Sarah, she corrected herself, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for everything, for favoring Ben, for not believing you, for not being the mother you deserved. I can't undo it, but I hope someday you can let us try to make it right." Even my father, the man of stony silence, spoke, his voice thick with emotion. "I was wrong too, Sarah. Deeply wrong. We want, if you'll let us, a chance to start over." Part of me wanted to scream, to unleash decades of hurt. But mostly, I just felt tired. I had survived. Revenge felt pointless. Peace felt essential. Ben held out the box. "We've started going to church," he mumbled, "trying to figure things out. They say forgiveness is mostly for yourself. I don't expect it, but I hope one day maybe." I took the box. Inside was a handwritten card in Ben's messy script. "Even if it's late, I hope I can still call you my sister again." Tears blurred my vision. I turned away briefly. All right, I managed, my voice thick. But things won't be like before. It will take time. A long time. We understand, my mom whispered. Just a new beginning. Honest. And slowly, carefully, we began. Visits were planned, boundaries respected. Ben brought the kids over on weekends. 8-year-old Emma loved to draw at my kitchen table. 10-year-old Max discovered an old game console I'd found. We planted sunflowers in the backyard. Their laughter started to fill the quiet spaces. But Jessica wasn't finished. One night, my security alarm blared. The camera showed a hooded figure, unmistakably Jessica, hurling eggs at my truck before fleeing. I filed a police report, pressed charges for vandalism. With the video evidence, a judge quickly issued a fine and a 3-year restraining order. Seeing her in court, defiant but defeated, felt like closing a final ugly chapter. Life settled into a peaceful rhythm. I rented out my spare rooms to Megan, a nurse, and Chris, an engineer. Their rent covered my mortgage, bringing unexpected financial freedom. My relationship with Ben and my parents evolved into something quiet, respectful, built on cautious honesty, not obligation. One afternoon, watching Emma and Max decorate a small tree in the yard, Max asked, "Aunt Sarah, aren't you lonely living alone?" I smiled. "Not at all, sweetie. Sometimes being alone means being free." This house, once a symbol of defiance, became a haven of peace, filled with sunflowers, children's laughter, and the quiet joy of a life rebuilt, finally, on my own terms. My journey wasn't easy, but it taught me the power of perseverance and self-worth. From being cast out to building a life and home of my own, I learned that true family isn't just about blood. It's about respect, support, and finding peace within yourself. What do you think about Sarah's story and how she reclaimed her life? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And please, don't forget to subscribe to Life Stories 1 for more powerful stories about navigating complex family dynamics and finding strength in adversity. Thanks for watching.